Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cozypreneur. So if you don't know my story, before I got into business and became a copywriter, I was a teacher and I got my degree in educational leadership, which basically means I spent a lot of time and money learning how to communicate with parents and teachers and district leaders and students, all these different stakeholders with different priorities, but they all had the same goal of providing quality education for the students. But everybody had really different ideas about how to get there. And so all of my experience in education, which I'm not going to get into in this episode, but all of my experience in education has really informed how I show up in my business, how I lead in my business, and how I make decisions in my business. And so, yes, this episode is about managing conflict, but it is also about what does it mean to be a leader when you encounter a sticky situation or emotions are high or people are asking you for advice. How do you deal with that? So let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Cozypreneur podcast. If this is your first time listening, Cozypreneur is all about helping you make money and work with the dreamiest of clients. So grab your beverage, get your cozy socks on, and let's dive in. So in education, you have all of these different stakeholders, and they all have different ideas about how to get to the goals that you set. And so it's the same in business, right? You have clients, you have contractors, you have collaborators, you have referral partners, and everybody has a different idea about how to grow their business, about what the expectations are going to be for working together. And so your job, especially if you have a team, right? Your job is to be able to zoom out, to see the full picture, and to be able to move things forward, even if people don't necessarily agree on the way to move forward, or even if, maybe it's not a great fit, but you already signed a contract with somebody, or maybe you have a team member who's dropping the ball. How do you handle those situations? I think it's never easy having a difficult conversation. It's never easy telling somebody hey, I loved working with you, but actually I don't think it's the best fit moving forward. It's not easy, right? But I think some of the things that have been super helpful for me is this idea of what is the outcome that I really want and how can I communicate that clearly? And that helps me kind of take the emotion out of it. And it's okay, well, hey, I wrote this email. Are they going to get the point that I'm trying to get across? And if they do, then that's great, right? And I think it's tricky, right? Because sometimes something happens, I don't know, somebody on your team made a mistake and your initial reaction is what the hell? I am pissed, I'm angry, right? That's a normal reaction. Somebody dropped the ball, it's okay. But then how are you going to handle it from there, right? I'm not saying you have to be calm all of the time, but maybe wait till you've calmed down to reply to people. For me, that's what I do. I pause. I really think about what's the goal, what's the outcome that I want, and then I will formulate my message based on what do I want the outcome to be, and not so much hey, here is a brain dump of all of my thoughts and feelings because I am really hurt now. So I think really just focusing on that end game, right? What's the point of the conversation and how do I best communicate where I want to go with this conversation? And one of the things that's also tricky is, and I see this all of the time in the online space of oh, I'm a safe space. My membership is a safe space. You don't get to decide that your membership is a safe space. Your members get to decide if your membership is a safe space. But I think that one of the common misconceptions, and I saw this in schools too, is that safe means there's no conflict. But what safe actually means is that people feel safe enough to bring up their conflict. And so especially with you as a leader, do clients feel safe enough to say, hey, I didn't really like when you did XYZ. I didn't like how you handled that. This isn't helpful to me. Do they feel safe enough to actually be honest with you without feeling afraid that they're going to get reprimanded or that you're going to get defensive, right? And that's really what it means to have a safe space. And I think one of the things too is the way that you are showing up as the leader. You can have boundaries and still show empathy and still be kind, right? So one example that I can think of is I do not start client work until after a deposit has been paid. And so if a client is taking a long time to give me the deposit, but we already had set a deadline, I will be very clear and say, hey, just so you know, I do not start work until after I have received your deposit. And if I don't get it soon, I'm not going to be able to meet this deadline that you wanted. And that is like super clear. It's honest and it's upholding my boundaries, which I feel like when you are treating yourself with as much respect as you treat your clients, like they're going to see that, right? They're going to understand like, okay, this is the expectation. This is super clear. And that's going to make them respect you more than if you were like, just trying to be like, hey, please sign the contract, or like, hey, please pay the deposit over and over and over again. Like, it's fine if you don't pay it, but this is the logical consequence, and that's my boundary. And so it's like, yes, you want a bedside manner, you want to be kind, but it's not about like people pleasing your way through situations. It's about like really communicating what needs to be said, even if it's an awkward conversation, even if it's a difficult conversation. And this is like really important. Like if you're coaching somebody, if you're giving somebody feedback, or, you know, how are you doing that? Are you doing it in a way that makes people feel like, okay, I understand the feedback and I'm excited to take the next step. I'm willing to grow. Or are you delivering feedback where people are shutting down and then not coming to you anymore with issues, right? Because if people don't feel safe and comfortable, if you get defensive, then people are not going to want to come to you with their issues again, right? That's the way that you build a healthy relationship, is being able to like give each other feedback in a way that's honest and transparent and then takes into account. I think another thing about creating safety is when you get feedback as a leader, and I think a lot of us do this really naturally, where, you know, you have an offer and then you get some feedback on it, things that worked, things that didn't work. And then the next round of your offer, you're kind of, you know, implementing some of those changes. You're taking what people said, you're taking the lessons that you've learned, and you're improving what you have. Like that's a huge leadership move, because it shows that you're listening to your people and you care about what they have to say. And you're going to take that into account when you're growing your business, because them as a client is important to you, right? So I think that when you have to deliver a email or a message that is like maybe feels like you're giving critical feedback, or maybe you're telling somebody that you're not renewing the contract and you want to be nice, but you know it's like the other person is not going to receive it super well, worry less about sounding nice and worry more about like, are you being honest? Are you being objective, right? And are you being communicative, right? Is the message that you want to say, is it clear? And like sometimes you are going to be pulled into other people's stuff. And so like, how can you manage that? How can you set clear boundaries of like, hey, I'm not getting involved in this. One of the biggest things in business is really understanding like what's your main goal and being able to work towards that. If somebody makes a mistake on your team, like how do you handle it? Are you being like angry at them? Are you saying like, hey, I noticed this happen. Like, what support do you need from me so that it doesn't happen again? It's really important that XYZ, right? Just getting on the same page of what the expectations are and how you can support them, right? It's not about like micromanaging your people. It's about figuring out how to get on the same page and what the common goals are and how to get there and how to get people like, you know, this is tricky, but like, how do you motivate your team? Like, how do you motivate people to actually get things done? There's a lot of bottlenecks, right? And so one thing that I do is interview my clients' clients. And so sometimes I'm talking to some real busy people and I will reach out and say, hey, I want to schedule a call with you. And not everybody responds. And so what I have done for myself is create a system, right? So I send 3 separate emails. And the first one is like, hey, I want to schedule a call with you. The second one is like, hey, I haven't heard from you. If you're willing, please schedule a call. And then the last one is like, hey, I totally understand if you're too busy to get on a call, but I'd love if you give me some feedback on these 3 specific questions. And that way it's like, yes, I would rather get on calls with people. It gives me a lot of information, but if people are too busy, then here's this alternate way. And so while I could be like, oh, I'm so stressed. They never got back to me. They must not, like, making up a story in my head about like why people are not getting back to me. I take the emotion out of it. Instead, it's a system, right? You get an email once a week until you answer me. Up to 3 emails. I'm not going to be spamming your people. It's dealing with stuff like that. It's being able to have the awkward conversation. It's being able to think about like, hey, this is the goal. This is how I can communicate to get to that goal. I think this is like really where, like, as a people pleaser, I can really struggle. And sometimes it takes me like 2 days to answer a message because I'm so anxious and so upset about something that I need time to really check in with myself and figure out like, where are these emotions coming from and how do I actually want to deal with this situation? And if you leave somebody on red for 2 days, like, that's okay. You don't have to answer people right away. But there's this piece of self-awareness that is really important in this leadership work, because you have to know yourself. You have to know how you handle emotions, and then you have to know your people too, right? And that means like, you don't need to over-explain yourself. This is something I do all of the time. You don't need to be like, hey, here are like the 5 reasons why I did this. Like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to worry about how other people are going to react to things. Like, they can react in the way that they're going to react. It is not your job to manage their emotions. As long as you are being professional and courteous, right, and clear, they can deal with their own emotions. And you don't have to be available all the time, right? Like, you can take a break, you can breathe, you can dial your own temperature down before you decide to answer somebody. And so boundaries is probably one of the most important things of being a leader. It really helps you show up in a better way. And, it's funny, one of my referral partners that I work with pretty frequently, he's like, yeah, you do such a good job of like just saying what it is. Like, you just say what it is and that's what it is and that's it. And I'm like, yeah, that's it, right? I'm very clear about what are my boundaries and very clear about what are the expectations. And then that just is what it is, right? There's no room for people to guess. When you're upfront with your boundaries and with your expectations, it does a really good job of preventing conflict, right? Versus kind of the other way. And I've definitely been in this situation where, like, at the beginning of my business, I wasn't doing such a great job of communicating clearly, and I didn't have really great systems in place. And so I had a very big miscommunication with a client, and it was on me. I will say, like, I definitely had to step up and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. Like, this was a big miscommunication on my part. Like, I understand like where you're coming from. And I had to offer, to either redo the project or offer her a refund. And like, yeah, that sucks. But at the same time, like, being able to recognize that like you're the person who fucked up and rectifying that situation, like, that's what good leaders do. Like, good leaders make mistakes, and that's okay, right? Like, everybody makes mistakes sometimes. It's more just like, how do you deal with it? Are you being defensive and being like, oh no, it's actually your fault? No, like, you're being like, hey, I apologize. Here's what I can do to make it up. So I think boundaries is like this huge piece of like, here's what I'm able to do, here's what I'm not able to do. And it really helps you show up with more integrity, right? It helps you show up even with more empathy, and being able to know, like, if you have a project and you are working like nights and weekends to try to get this project done, instead of communicating to your clients that like, hey, I actually can't do it in this timeline, like, that's going to affect the way you show up, right? Rather than being like, hey, I understand that you want it by this deadline, and I want to make sure that you're getting the quality of work that you want and deserve, right? And so it's actually going to take this amount of time. And so there's a lot of like difficult conversations around boundaries, but it really does help set you up for success and help set your client relationship up for success. And so this whole episode, yes, it's about leadership. It's about communication. It's also about you and your boundaries and your leadership style, and just making sure that you're leading from a place of like clarity and being grounded versus just because you're people pleasing and trying to get through it. Because that's something I also struggle with at times. But just a reminder that you are allowed to protect your peace. I'm wondering, what's something that you've been avoiding or something that you wish you handled differently? feel free to email me or DM me. This is definitely something that I am still learning every day as I navigate different situations, as I navigate different relationships. But I did want to bring this to Cozypreneur because it is a topic that I have seen come up. So when you protect your peace, that's going to help you get more things done. That's going to help you show up as a better leader, and just don't overthink the difficult conversations. Everybody has to have them, and it's okay. If you have any questions or if you are avoiding a conversation, I get it. I've been there. Shoot me an email. I love to hear from all of you. And thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to rate and review the show. And until next time. That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to rate and leave a review on your preferred listening platform. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe for weekly episodes about how to make money and work with the dreamiest of clients without having to get dressed in the morning. Make sure to check out the show notes down below, and I'll see you in the next episode.